What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video, I'm showcasing the incredible power of the artifact perk Argent Ordnance. Now, Argent Ordnance used to be an armor mod that would give bonus damage to rockets, and it's stacked. So if you ran 3 copies of it, you would do 35% more rocket damage when you were charged with light. Well, now Bungie has brought it back as an artifact mod, and it is insanely good. I'm noticing that Bungie has now finally removed every outlier for damage stacking. Things like Ballador's Wrathweavers buffing stasis weapons above and beyond what is intended, and Path of Burning Steps sadly getting caught in the crossfire, as it used to give a 40% weapon damage bonus at its max stacks. But what this has allowed is Bungie to make artifact mods stackable with what we have in our arsenal. Case in point, Solo Operative, which literally stacks with every buff in the game so long as you are solo. And that brings us to Argent Ordnance. This is an artifact perk that states firing a rocket launcher consumes 1 stack of armor charge, granting increased damage and reload speed until you reload or stow your rocket launcher. What is cool about this is, thanks to reconstruction, we can actually shoot 2 rockets off and only use up 1 charge of Argent Ordnance. If you are in a DPS phase, you definitely want to be utilizing charged up mods in your chest piece so that you can unload all your rockets with this damage buff. So let's get into the testing. I tested an Apex Predator with bait and switch, as that is pretty much the best rocket launcher in the game thanks to it being solar and having a craftable god roll, and I also tested Ascendancy because it has multiple perks which I am able to use for consistent testing numbers. So speaking of the testing, let's look at that. On my Ascendancy, I started with a base rocket with chain reaction. No damage buffs, no damage perk, not even a spec mod, and that hits for only about 95,000 damage. The next thing I want to show is Gallahorn. Big shout out to my friend Rhino for shooting Galley and Lumina for me. Anyways, when they shoot Galley, my Wolfpack rounds do 3754 and 8045 damage each. I then apply Argent Ordnance, and the Wolfpack rounds hit for 4317 and 9251 damage. This is a 15% buff. As such, I will not be doing further testing with Galley, but this aims to prove that this mod does buff the Wolfpack rounds, which is obviously extremely strong. So now, just testing Argent Ordnance by itself, we hit for 109,144 damage total. This is 15% more than the roughly 95,000 damage at base. So with this, we can establish that Argent Ordnance is a 15% buff. But does it stack with all the other buffs in the game? Well, let's see. With 3 solar weapon surges and Argent Ordnance, we hit for 133,155 damage. Then we throw Radiant in the mix, and we hit for 166,444 damage, a 25% increase. So here we can see that yes, Argent Ordnance stacks with Radiant and Solar Weapon Surge. This is huge news for raid DPS, as rockets were already strong, and now they just got 15% better. Then we throw a damage increasing perk on our rocket like Explosive Light, and with all those other buffs, we hit for 207,751 damage. Again, a 25% damage increase. And because Carl is a major, we throw on a major spec which is 7.7% more damage, and hit for a total of 223,896. But there is one buff that overrides Radiant, and that is the 35% damage buff from Lumina. I guess Banner Shield is like 40% last I checked, but screw it, let's just look at Lumina. And here we hit for 241,807 damage. So yes, Argent Ordnance stacks with all of these things. And that isn't even to mention debuffs. Tractor Cannon or a Tether can give you another 30% more damage. And Bait and Switch is a 35% damage boost rather than 25% like Explosive Light. So in a team setting, you can have Galley Wolfpack rounds, Lumina for 35% more damage, 3 Solar Surges for 22%, and then 15% more damage from Argent Ordnance, and a 30% debuff. This is a 2.46x damage multiplier. And I didn't even include the 7.7% that you'd get from a spec mod because that is pretty standard, but if you did, that would take it to 2.65x damage. But then, if we're solo, the damage is even crazier, because Solo Operative also stacks with all those buffs plus Argent Ordnance. Obviously, if you are solo, you won't have Wolfpack rounds, but you can have Radiant easier than ever this season, and your solar abilities can apply a 15% weaken with Revitalizing Blast. So if we take these buffs into account, let's see what we get. You get 25% from Radiant, 22% from 3x Solar Surge, 15% from Argent Ordnance, a further 15% from Solo Operative, and a 15% weaken with Revitalizing Blast. That is more than double damage, If we factor in a spec mod, then you hit for 2.17x your regular damage. If we have surge for the activity, that is 25% more damage on top of all that. And we have overload rocket launcher, so you can always have rocket surge no matter the elemental affinity. So when content with surges, you can hit for 2.72x damage. And then with a damage perk like bait and switch dealing another 35% damage, your rocket will hit for 3.67 times more than base. On Carl, the base damage is 125,014, and with all the buffs procced, it is 340,373. And that is not even including a surge or a debuff from Revitalizing Blast. And that is how at the start of the video, I was able to one-shot a champ in a Master Lost sector. All those buffs working together to deal some insane damage. The artifact this season is honestly nuts, and as I have mentioned in other videos, there has never been a better time to solo GMs or dungeons. The power creep is real, folks. Anyways, go forth and destroy everything with your rocket launchers. It has literally never been easier. GMs with Cenotaph Warlocks this season will be an absolute joke with how strong we are. If you found this video helpful, then a like and sub would be greatly appreciated. Happy rocket spamming, and take care.